So when you set out to do your Stucknauting work, when you set out to do your unstucking work, I call it Stucknauting. When you set out to do that, there's 3 things that I want to give to you to help reduce the intensity of that fear. Now, one of these is more of a longer term. The other 2 are short-term, immediate things you can do. The first one is the longer term one, and that's developing the strength of your safety state. I know you've heard me say this a lot. Your vagal brake must be strengthened before delving into your stuck defensive state. It is absolutely imperative, and from what I can tell, I don't look too deeply, but from what I can tell in other modalities, thought processes around psychology and whatnot, or therapists, not me, I don't do that anymore, but therapists in general completely overlook this aspect, and they just sort of expect or maybe even pressure people to talk about their trauma narrative, the stuff they've been through, which ends up just being re-traumatizing. So your vagal brake strength, your safety state must be developed, in my opinion, before attempting to go into your stuck defensive state. That's why in my courses I have building safety anchors completely as its own phase. It's the middle phase of my larger polyvagal trauma relief system. So building safety anchors is distinct from unstucking defensive states, which is the third phase. So before, just like in my model, like in my system, before you go into that stuck defensive energy, you have to have the vagal brake developed. Because when you go into the stuck defensive state, there's a really good chance that freeze or fear will come along with whatever's inside of you. As you develop, again, longer term, as you develop the strength of your vagal brake, then that immobility of freeze, the immobility of fear, will thaw and enable you to feel and act on your mobility, your flight fight energy, or at least to feel it and allow some shifts to happen within you. Number 2, which is shorter term, is to use your safety anchors. These are the things that ground you in your safety state. So before you delve into the more dysregulated, stuck defensive state, before you do that, your vagal brake should be developed. But in order to do that, you need to know what helps you to feel safe, what grounds you in your safety state. The more you practice that, then your vagal brake gets developed, or that's part of what develops it. And when it comes to these safety anchors, I want you to really look at it in 2 different ways. And this is, Dr. Porges talks about this in his second book, I believe, which is passive safety anchors and active safety anchors. Passive ones are things that are, environmentally, that just bring you a passive cue of safety, things you don't have to actually do or consciously notice, although I think mindfully noticing them brings it to an active level and is more helpful. But there might be things around you right now that are a cue of safety. In my office, if you're on YouTube, you can see I have like some of my favorite stuff behind me. I have some Lego that I built with my son. It's Venom. He's a comic book anti-hero. And my son and I made that from some Lego build. My daughter and I are working on a Seinfeld one right now. I have a 49ers helmet from my childhood. All these things. I have Optimus Prime, all these nerdy things, plus my polyvagal books, my design, a couple of design books in there, some fake plants, some markers behind me. These are all passive things that when they're there, when I just see them, there's a cue of safety for me. There's things in there that have meaning for me that are safe. I have a dim light behind me. I have a Lego bonsai tree. These are things that just provide me a passive cue of safety. That's different than me doing something like some active fidgeting or smelling something that I find grounding, like an orange or a lemon or a lime, or tasting something that I find grounding, or looking at something that I find grounding, or like maybe reducing the lighting in my room. All these things that would be more passive actually. So there's passive cues and active cues, and you'll have to kind of differentiate, what's what for you, and to use those things before trying to do some Stucknauting and looking more directly at your stuck defensive state. And the third thing to help reduce fear in your unstucking work. So besides the active safety cues, besides the passive safety cues, I want you to give yourself some top-down safety anchors beforehand. Again, this is all before you start delving into your dysregulation, before you start that meditation, before you start that therapeutic practice, whatever it is. So give yourself some top-down cognitions to further anchor yourself in safety. And I would recommend that you do the top-down cognitions plus be in an environment of safety, of passive safety, plus do something that is more actively activating or actively grounding yourself in safety. So these would be like top-down things. It could be thoughts, it could be memories, things that you're sending from the top down, from your brain to your body, basically. It could be, like I said, a memory. It could be your imagination. It could be a thought that you're giving yourself, like, I deserve to live a life with more safety, or I can handle this. I've prepared for this. I believe in myself, and I can handle, whatever is inside of me. And now you have to be honest with yourself about that, by the way. And if you can't, that's okay. Come back to it when you're ready. Or you could say, look, this is going to be challenging. I want to know what's in there. I'm curious to know what the heck's happening inside of me. So I believe in myself. I'm at least curious. And if I need to stop, it's okay to stop. If I need to stop, I know how to stop. And I'm allowed to pause this and come back to it when I'm ready. All this stuff is covered, by the way, in my polyvagal trauma relief system. All this stuff is covered in depth. I hope those 3 tips are helpful for at least crafting your mindset around this unstucking stuff and your own meditation practice. Maybe if you're not doing these things already, bring it to whatever you're doing, especially that passive and active safety anchoring. I think those are really, really, really helpful. Now, usually I would end the episode by offering you a freebie for my email list, or in exchange for being on my email list, but I'm going to hold off on that. I want to actually ask you, what is it you want to know? I want to know what questions you have, but specifically, I want to hear your voice. I would love to get audio clips of you, of my listeners, my audience here, my fellow Stucknauts. I would love to get audio clips hearing your voice with whatever question that you have. You don't have to say your name. I don't want any personal details. And the more general and the more general you can make it in a 1 or 2 sentence clip, that's it. That's all you got to do. I would love to hear your voice. I would love to feature your voice here on the podcast. Otherwise, I'll have to keep using those AI voices. I haven't done that for a couple episodes. I might come back pretty quick. I would love to have your voice here on the podcast, and I really want to answer whatever questions you may have. And the best way to send me a clip of your voice is just to use your phone. You don't have to have a fancy microphone. It doesn't have to sound perfect. I don't care if there's background noises. That's fine. Just use your phone to record your voice and email it to me at justinlmft@gmail.com. Again, that's justinlmft@gmail.com. I really hope to hear from you. Literally. That's it for this episode. I do hope this has been helpful for you, a helpful resource in your process of learning and applying the polyvagal theory to your trauma recovery. Bye.
This podcast is not therapy, not intended to be therapy or be a replacement for therapy. Nothing in this creates or indicates a therapeutic relationship. Please consult with your therapist or seek for one in your area if you are experiencing mental health symptoms. Nothing in this podcast should be construed to be specific life advice. It is for educational and entertainment purposes only. More resources are available in the description of this episode and in the footer of justinlmft.com.